When you create a sales or purchase order, you can add charges to the order header and/or the order lines. Typically, you manually add charges to a sales or purchase order when the charges apply only to the specific order. For example, a customer calls and requests a large order. Because this is not a common order for the customer, the order taker adds the charges directly to the sales order instead of setting up the charges for the item. You can watch the following demonstration to see how to add charges to a sales order. The process for the manual setup of a charge for a purchase order resembles the setup for a sales order. However, for purchase orders, the header charges can be allocated to the lines. Typically, you will allocate charges to the lines when the cost must be allocated to each line item in a purchase order. When you add charges to the purchase order header, you can determine how the charges are to be allocated on the lines by clicking the Allocate Charges button in the Charges group on the Purchase tab of the Action pane. Let's open AX and create and allocate some charges on a purchase order. I'll go to the Procurement and Sourcing module to create a new purchase order underneath Common and then All Purchase Orders. I'll click the New Purchase Order button to create a new purchase order, and then I'll select the vendor to be used. I'll click OK to create the order, and then I'll add a line to the order. I'll select the site and warehouse and enter the quantity and verify the unit price. You can add as many lines to your order as you want. For this example, I'll create a header charge and then I will allocate it to the lines. To maintain the charges, you'll want to click on the Purchase tab in the Action pane and then click Maintain Charges in the Charges group. This will open a new screen where you can set up the charges. When you add a charge to the header of the order, it is not specific to one particular line. Let's create a fee. And then in the value field, we'll type 200. I'll close this window and then I'll allocate this amount to the lines. You do this by clicking the Allocate Charges button in the Charges group of the Action pane. The Allocate Charges dialog box will open. You can select the options of how you want to allocate the lines. You can base this on the net amount of the lines, the quantity of the lines, or base it on a per line basis. For this example, I'll do it based on the net amount. When you allocate charges to the lines, you can select which lines should be allocated. You can choose from all lines, just the positive lines, or just the negative lines. The Allocate All checkbox indicates that all of the amounts should be allocated. The Receive checkbox will indicate that you should only allocate the amount to lines that have been received. The Stock checkbox is used to indicate that the amount should only be allocated to items that are stocked. You can also use the Show Selections and Clear Specific lines, which will make a new grid appear where you can manually select and enter the amounts to be allocated line by line. For this example, we're just going to do a simple allocation to all of the lines and then click Allocate. In this particular example, because there's only one line, the entire amount is allocated to the line. So if we click Financials and then Maintain Charges for that line, you can see that the charge now appears on the line level of this particular purchase order. Now that we've added charges manually to an order, you can watch the following demonstration to add charges to a sales order. I'll see you in the next lesson where we'll talk about automatic charges.